Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm a retired writer, not much of a moderator, so bear with me. Here we go. I think that I'd like to congratulate all of you for being here. It's really important to have this kind of interest in a local race. In a lot of ways, a council race, it's kind of where the rubber meets the road as far as having a representative who's accountable to you. And you are going to be able to listen to 4 excellent candidates tonight. And I'd like to thank the candidates for throwing their hats in the ring. It takes a lot of time, commitment, money, probably. And so I hope that when they come up here and they engage, that you'll have a better idea of who you'd like to see represent you in Ward 2. I will just ask them to come up right now. Aram Ayra, where's Aram? Here he comes. Aram Ayra. Have a seat, sure. Christen Montero. Thank you. Gracie Torres. And where's Mike Vahl? Here he comes. All right. So this first round is kind of a free-form thing, which means that I'm going to throw out a question. And again, as Jason said, these questions are sort of born from your answer, from your filling out your registration and seeing what's on your mind. So, and they will discuss these topics for about 8 minutes. I will try to just keep out of it. It'll be kind of a free form, freewheeling among the candidates. And we're kind of hoping that the microphones work and that there's not a lot of feedback, but we're going to get through it. So the first discussion topic, and I'll just read it right from here. You will not be surprised. This is number 1. I gather from what Justin has told me, this is on the minds of people all across Riverside in all 3 wards. Homelessness. Riverside has spent tens of millions of dollars over the past several years trying to address homelessness. Some efforts have moved people into housing. Others have drawn very sharp criticism. The city's own count shows that homelessness is up more than 50% since 2022. This is the reality that one of you will inherit on day 1. So here's the question. What is your philosophy? Not your plan, not your 5-point program, but your philosophy about homelessness. What is the city's most basic, fundamental obligation to someone who is living on the street? And where does that obligation end? And assuming that obligation is met, what do Riverside residents deserve in return?
Thank you for that question. As you said, this is an issue that everyone is dealing with in every ward. And so one thing that we know is that homelessness is not going to be resolved by one person, not by one city. It really is going to take a regional approach. The County of Riverside is going to be receiving funding for mental health care. They're going to be receiving funding for substance abuse support, for job development. And the city of Riverside, it is incumbent upon them to lobby for those dollars. We need to work with our partners. As far as philosophy, though, we need to be accountable to those who are experiencing homelessness, right? Dumping a ton of money into a problem and watching it just go down a well is not the solution. Housing first is the first step, but we need to continue to support those that we are trying to keep housed. And so We do that, again, not only through regional approaches, but through a real accountability on what we are doing with the money that is being spent. I like to use the analogy of the Salton Sea. I'm a water person, so I like to use the analogy of the Salton Sea. Billions go into the Salton Sea. 90% of it goes into administration, right? Paying for reports, paying for studies, paying for staff. None of it has actually been used to dig something into the ground to fix the Salton Sea. And that is what we're seeing in California and Riverside and the county happen with this issue. And so we need to be accountable. We need to take a hard look at what we're doing after somebody is housed and how we plan to support them otherwise. Homelessness, so people suffering from homelessness come in many shapes and sizes, right? Whether it's the lack of jobs, whether it's, again, mental health support or substance abuse support, all those things, they're different. So let's continue to help them through creating jobs. Everyone knows that I want to be the jobs candidate. We need to create jobs. We need to lobby our partners throughout the county, throughout the region.
One of the things that we need to do is, as Gracie said, is we dump, and Dan said, is we dump tens of millions of dollars to these firms out there that say, we're going to fix this problem. As a business guy, when you go to an investor, the first thing they say is, what are you going to do with our money? And what can we expect? Well, we want benchmarks from 6 months and a year and the second year. We don't do that. We just say, here's a check. And how much of it goes to administration? God only knows. But what we need to do with these firms is we're going to give them our money to work on the homelessness problem. I want to see, what are you going to spend it on? And what can we expect after 1 year? Because right now they say, give me $2 million. And next year they come back and say, give me $2.5 million. Nobody asks, well, what'd you do? They just say, okay, here's the check. And if homelessness gotten any better after spending tens of millions of dollars? No. So accountability with where we're spending the money is a good start. And then we've got to, from there, just figure out the people that have substance problems. We need to get them into treatment programs. A lot of them don't want to go. They want to stay on the streets. But we have laws on the books that say we need to put these people into programs. We have to work with the county to build some mental health facilities for the people that have mental issues. They may not be on drugs, but they've got mental issues, and those people need to have housing and treatment. And that's how you're going to start getting this solved, because people do not want, a lot of these people don't want help. And we need to start working on it in the next couple of years, because in 2028 in Los Angeles, you guys may have heard that there's an Olympics coming. None of those homeless people that are in Los Angeles are going to be in Los Angeles.
Mike, I want to jump in here because you talked about accountability and you talked about the Olympics coming up, which I'm concerned about too. I think if we're talking about accountability, we also have to talk about accountability for our elected officials in actually doing the right thing. And my philosophy is that the city of Riverside was founded on a spirit of neighborliness. This was in our founding documents, in our charter. John W. North only talked about that, about progress, about neighborliness. And we have failed our neighbors in this city. We have failed them most recently when the council voted against one of the most consequential investments in homelessness we could have made in a generation, in the University Terrace project. We turned down $20 million plus from the state to get a third of our waiting list of our unsheltered folks off of the waiting list, which would have been huge. So if we're going to talk about accountability, we should talk about holding our elected officials accountable to actually presenting a solution, not just voting no every time that it's politically convenient or they can use that on their next flyer to say that they protected the community. And if we want to protect the community, we don't have to protect them from homeless people. We have to protect the community from Orange County, LA County, and the other cities that take advantage of our city and do homeless dumping, an issue that many of you know about and many of you have heard about. And I intend to do that through legal action and through a variety of different ways to make sure that our resources and our neighbors are not being taken advantage of.
Yeah, Aram, I would agree. The accountability piece has been a huge missing part for our city council today, along with compassion. Right now, research shows that tons of our homeless are residents that were one paycheck away from not being able to make rent anymore. At the same time, it's also people struggling with addiction that need help, need those core services. And also research shows that the housing first model is one of the most proven models to actually help people out of homelessness, rather than a shelter model where it keeps people entrapped. It doesn't empower, it doesn't really help them to really get out of the struggle that a lot of us are very sometimes close to making just one wrong decision, or maybe it's just completely out of our hands and it's circumstantial and all of a sudden we're laid off. Along with that, not, having a lot of shelters anymore is one thing, but having a scattered site model where people are more inclined to be more involved into the community, surrounded by people that are not homeless as well. So they have a better chance of really getting acclimated back as neighbors, back as being able to contribute into our neighborhood and our society as well. So my philosophy definitely is a housing first priority. And at the same time, I think the elephant in the room is the Quality In project. A lot of our city council, we talk about accountability. 3 years ago, they voted all to apply for that grant. And then in the end, we got the money and it got turned down for other political agendas. And I think that needs to stop today.
We have 30 seconds, so go ahead.
Yeah, it is important to acknowledge that if any of us are elected in June, what would actually change, right? The votes would be actually exactly the same if you're elected. Whereas I'm willing and I'm ready to work with the council, make phone calls and say, how do we get you to a yes? How do we change your vote to a yes so that we don't face the pushback and the reputation that we're getting across the state for having turned down the project? And that's very important to acknowledge. We need to be able to get things done on the dais, and that's by working together.
All right, thank you. That wraps up round one. And I thought that went pretty well. Feel free to ask questions of each other as well. If that, it is a little bit out of the ordinary, so you're kind of used to giving speeches, which is great. But if you want to have someone elaborate on what their views are, have at it. Have this kind of a discussion like you're having coffee or something like that, and you're just kind of hashing things out. All right, here's number 2, budget and fiscal priorities. Riverside's Measure Z sales tax revenue has declined for 2 consecutive years. The city says the general fund is under pressure, and the city staff has recommended tens of millions of dollars in cost reductions or cuts during the next 2 budget cycles. The question is, you've been elected to the city council. Congratulations. You get the budget, and sure enough, there's not enough money to pay for everything the city needs. What do you protect? What do you cut or eliminate? And how do you make those decisions?
For 25 years, I worked at Canyon Lake. I was the controller and county manager for 19 of those, and I was in charge of budgets, and it was a $10 million budget. And you have to start with your most important priorities, which are public safety. And that's your top one. And then you go down from there. You've got staff that's telling you what you need to cut. You work with your different interest groups and figure out. That's just a part of being a manager, is figuring out what to cut and who's getting over budget and why are we spending this much money on this particular thing instead of this much money. But as far as Measure Z goes, I'm a no on the current proposal. I would make it a special tax, not a general fund tax.
Well, I think that is a great idea. But the reality also is, if we do have it as a special tax fund and we want it to go on the ballot, it has to be a 2/3 vote, which is really difficult for a collective whole for us to be able to achieve. I think there's also the issue of accountability, right? We've seen this Measure Z come up, go to the general fund, and then all of a sudden things that were promised don't get paid for. Meanwhile, other things continue to be funded. I think that is where the line needs to be drawn, right? We can't keep pulling money from our hard work that we've done just because the city needs more money. But I'm pretty sure we all at one point sat in front of the Chamber of Commerce saying yes to Measure Z. For me, Measure Z right now for this year really helps with infrastructure. And I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure. The city has grown, and firefighters, we're down quite a few firefighters right now in just being able to serve our community. We want to continue growing housing, but if we continue growing housing, that means more fire response, more public safety response. That's more demand that we're already have a shortage of. But we also can't keep relying on the Measure Z to fund everything and every new idea or deal with the fact that there's inflation and we can't meet those budgets or those needs. So I think it's time to think outside of the box, increase different ways to have revenue into the city outside of having this tax that cannot go on forever, God forbid. But also, I would like to challenge everyone to be honest tonight and not change our answers in front of residents and to own our answers tonight. So
That's,
thank you.
thank you for bringing that up. But let's come back to the topic. What would we cut, right? Or where would we shift things? I think was the actual question. I've done this before on the water district. Have experience in this and looking at where funds need to go. And a mentor of mine calls it meat and potatoes, right? Get back to the basics. We got to take care of our roads. We got to take care of our trees. We got to make sure that we don't make traffic worse. And the way I see it when we're talking about affordability, especially for families like myself, if the city isn't taking care of city services, we flip two bills. We pay the taxes, and then we're paying to fix our tires, right? And then we're paying to fix, the roof where the tree fell in because the city didn't take care of its job. So we need to go back to the basics. If we end up with a budget where we're looking at, hey, we can't pay for everything we're promising in our high school speeches, right? Where we're going to give everybody everything. We need to go back to the basics because this is one thing I know we all agree on is that the quality of life in the city is good and we need to keep that going. And so as we're looking at budgets, when we're looking at budgets at Western Municipal Water Districts, we stick to the mission, right? Serving good, reliable water. And if we're doing anything outside of that and we need to rearrange that budget, those things are the things that get cut, the ones that do not serve that purpose. And that's how it needs to be with the city.
Is there anything in the, is there anything, question to all of you, in the city budget that you know of right now that you could see cutting if you had to make that choice?
I would like to answer that question because I think that's always our response is we kick the can down the road, we mismanage the funding, and then we start saying, what can we cut? And, I know Gracie mentioned that quality of life is good. I've been out knocking thousands of doors in Ward 2, and that's not what I'm hearing from folks. Our roads are not in a good shape. Our infrastructure is not in a good shape. Projects that should have been done years ago, like some of our rail grade separations and stuff, have not happened yet. Homelessness is at an all-time high, as we just heard. This is an issue, again, with the mismanagement of the funding and the crisis that we go to every single time when we say we promise that this is the last tax that we pass. We promise we're not going to ask you for money again. And then suddenly 10 years later, we're encumbered for the next 3 years. And I saw this directly. I'm on the Budget Engagement Commission. We saw the Measure Z proposal before it went to council. This is an issue. We need accountability on how the money is being spent. Do I support fire and public safety? Absolutely. I don't think any of the candidates up here would say anything different if they wanted to get elected, obviously. But I think it's important for us to also consider, where are we getting our revenue from? Our development impact fees have not been updated in Riverside for over a decade. So the large warehouses that I know all Ward 2 residents hate and don't like, they're paying the lowest amount of money into the city. They're creating the infrastructure problems that everybody is dealing with, the flat tires, the potholes, and everything else. They're creating the pollution that poisons these communities. And we are not getting money from them to pay towards this, and they're passing that cost off to you as a taxpayer. So I'm completely opposed to that. I would change that as a council member on day one.
You're not going to be able to go back to the ones that are already built and say, oh, now we're going to charge you X, Y, Z, but that doesn't work because you've signed a contract and they're so
if I could respond to that, we actually can. The city of Redlands passed a business license tax in 2022, And they did exactly that. They went towards, I believe, warehouses that were built for 10 to 15 years already, had already recouped most of their costs, collected I think over $500,000. They just have a much smaller.
Yeah, but all of ours are all brand new and they're haven't even been put anything in it yet. They're all empty.
But we just
So how are you gonna go back and-
approved again 2 new warehouses. Just to your point, we just approved 2 new warehouses that we're not doing that for.
We did.
We
Where?
did in Ward 2 off of Kansas Avenue.
Unanimously, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and I would say public safety is definitely a core service to address because it impacts the quality of life for all of us. And the budget cuts, who suffers the most? Our city staff. They end up, some of them lose their jobs. Others have to now do a job of 2 to 3 people, and that's not what we want either. So I think it's time to really think outside of the box when it comes to looking at new revenues. Getting innovative, right? It's time that things change. There's a new direction in city council, one where accountability matters the most and driving the results of how we make our decisions and the projects that we choose to put our money into and what impact they're truly having. I'm glad to share that most recently, we're going to have Harvard come in and do a study to actually look at some of the projects that are coming into the city and see what's really being impacted. And that's something that you all can start getting, some information on through the city. That was recently decided and announced at our board and commissioned training a couple weeks ago as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Good round. On to round 3. Housing and neighborhood character. The state is pushing cities to build more housing, not just affordable housing, but housing in general, homes and apartments. But Riverside has issued permits for less than 20% of the units the state says it needs. Yet residents across the city worry about what growth is doing to their neighborhoods. More density, more traffic, more corporate-owned rentals, and less of what made them choose to live there in the first place. So here's your question. How do you strike a balance between these 2 competing interests? Where can housing be added in your ward, Ward 2, and which neighborhoods would be most severely and unfairly disrupted by new residential construction?
I would like to take this one if I could. I've talked about this extensively. First and foremost, we have about 389 units of housing in the pipeline through 2028 per the last report we got at the Budget Engagement Commission. This is all types, affordable, not affordable, any kind of housing units. At the same time, we have over 3,000 housing units that are owned by private equity companies and hedge fund companies just in the city of Riverside. Many of these houses are actually rentals. They're not homes. They've been taken off of the market, and we've allowed Wall Street to boss around our housing policy and our housing stock. So on day one, something that I would be doing actually is tracking and assessing which of these houses are owned by private equity companies, assessing a fee and making sure that money goes towards our local affordable housing trust fund, which is currently majorly underfunded. And we can't even offer incentives to affordable housing developers that want to build. I would prioritize building along University Avenue. It's already zoned R4. It's near a lot of transit corridors. And this is something that we don't have to shove into a single family community that I know a lot of people are concerned about in Canyon Crest and University and other spaces where they've seen the impact of the housing cut-ups and they've seen the impact of having large apartments put with no plans for traffic or any of that management. So we need to be smart about it. The University Avenue specific plan hasn't been updated in over 20 years. It's outdated. It's not matching the needs that we have. That would be, for me, a day one issue that I would take on and really promote and try to build along University Avenue so that we, as Ward 2 at least, could meet our quota and then work with the other wards to see what we could do there.
Yes, I would agree. And we actually, on May 2nd, there's a general plan update that all of you can attend. It is open to the public. So if you haven't heard about it yet, that's your time to actually share what you think should be done in your ward specifically. I think also we have a lot of missing middle class housing. So even though we're seeing, a lot of multi-unit housing, there's a lot of us who want to own homes that there's no homes to own. And maybe there's some land available, but there's a lot of land right now that's tied up in the city for different reasons that I think there also needs to be a land trust that's developed within our own city, one that's not just a separate sector, but its own organization, because it has been a proven model. And right now, the only one that exists is the Inland Empire Land Trust. But having something for our city of our size is usually something that a city like ours would have, because it enables and allows the flexibility and getting rid of some of the red tape and fighting of different organizations and the bureaucracy that happens when it comes to developing housing as well. I think the Quality Inn project should have happened when it comes to the University Terrace, because that would have provided a lot of housing for homeless we see on the streets right now. And that's something that also, like we mentioned before, has to get cleaned up.
I've worked in government for over 10 years now, and one thing that we don't realize is that we get in our own way when it comes to growth. And in this case, housing, right? One of the things that matters to me is seeing things moving faster, streamlining processes, whether that's at the permitting phase or supporting legislation that tightens the CEQA timelines. And those are policies that we can actually implement and that we can actually work on as a council. Sometimes we talk about state mandates as if like we're the ones making these mandates. We still have local controls when it comes to jurisdiction and land use authority. And we need to use those to create infills, to do adaptive reuse projects, and become a city that builds in diversity, but also makes it easier, right? Developers, housing developers don't really want to come to the city of Riverside. And I've talked to plenty of them. They're like, well, it takes too long to build in the city of Riverside. So it is incumbent upon us to create those incentives, get out of our own way. The state is creating enough barriers for growth, for development, for businesses. We shouldn't be adding more roadblocks when it comes to those things. The way we're going to meet those mandates is by getting out of our own way.
Are there neighborhoods, let me just reset a little bit more. Are there neighborhoods in Ward 2 besides University Avenue that are ripe for this kind of development, and others that really should be protected from it?
Actually, University Avenue, Ward 2 goes Chicago to the university.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all commercial right there. It's all built. So without knocking down buildings, there's really no residential in university for Ward 2. But there may be room for a couple of houses, but that would be really about it. Be back by the old Cask and Cleaver or something, but I think that's all zone commercial. That's not residential back there. But as Gracie said, the city is part of our problem. I personally called down there to get a permit to change a power box at our house. They told me it's 6 weeks at least to get a permit. Well, they used to be able to go down there, fill it out, go to lunch, come back and get your permit. That's ridiculous. And then they said, oh, it'll be a minimum of 2 weeks to get an inspector. I said, I'm in the middle of a housing remodel. I can't wait 8 weeks. But that's what the city does to us. So getting people in there and getting our customer service better, quicker. Developers hate this. We've got people that take 3 years to submit a plan, and it costs them $500,000. It's ridiculous. The fees they charge to start building houses and apartments, it's $50,000, $70,000 a door before you put one stick of 2x4 up to nail something to it.
If I could jump in just to redirect it back to where else we would build. University Avenue definitely is zone R4, just saying I did check the maps all the way down through Chicago and further. And if anyone's driven down University Avenue lately, it looks bombed out. Apart from a couple of nice developments that have happened, there's just empty plots of land waiting to be built on. The other thing that I would definitely prioritize, I would hold, I'm an alumni of this university. I love UCR, but we need to get UCR to build more student housing on campus. The students have spilled over into the university community. I know many of you have talked about that. I live in the university community, so I've seen both sides. I was a student and I'm now a resident and been a renter in the university neighborhood for 12 years now. We need to be able to build more housing on campus. I believe at the current number, we're about 40, maybe 50% of students housed on campus. The rest live out in the communities. And I was a student, I have all love for them, but they create a lot of noise disturbances, problems, and other things. And they take away houses that could be homes, starter homes for people, and turn them into forever rentals by folks that don't even live, not only in the city, but sometimes in the state or sometimes in the country. I had a foreign
Before
landlord. He was a
we
very
run
nice
out of
gentleman,
time,
but yeah.
Really,
Please.
really quick before I
go
just
ahead.
want to note that the Hunter Hobby industrial area is very neglected in Ward 2, unfortunately. And that's what I'm hearing as we're knocking on doors. Perfect opportunity for growth. Probably the only place where real growth can happen is still in that Hunter Hobby area. And so that would be one. It's by where I live. And I want to make sure that they don't continue to feel like no one's listening to them.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're on topic 4, economic development. Kind of goes hand in hand with what you said. This is a fair bet that there's probably not a single candidate in any of the city council races who doesn't want to bring good jobs and better businesses to Riverside. Question is, what kinds of jobs and businesses does the city, especially in your ward, need the most? And what does a council member actually do to attract such jobs and businesses?
I'll start with this one because this is my number one passion. I have a sweet 18-year-old who is facing down the reality of entering this job market. And so that is one of the reasons that's for me. And it's not just for students and graduating college or graduating high school. It's also for mothers that want to enter the workforce again after having, stayed at home for 18 years. These are opportunities that we need, and I've done it. I brought $2 million into the region to create good paying careers, not just jobs, careers in water and wastewater industry. What we're seeing is that about 30% of our workforce was about to retire. And so we said, how do we address this, but in an equitable way? And so we partnered with community-based organizations to recruit from communities that haven't had access to these careers before. We've trained them and certified them and then placed them in jobs in the water industry. I want to do the same thing at the city. I don't know if a lot of you knew this, but to work at the city or the county, you actually need a bachelor's degree. A bachelor's degree when I was finishing college meant a lot. And that's just not the case anymore. There is no reason why these entry-level jobs cannot be more accessible to our residents. So that, I was just talking to my friend here and telling him, I've worked for the county for 12 years and I'm never leaving. I have a career, I'm never leaving. I love it. It's a good paying union job. But that's because I work 10 minutes away. I cannot fathom having to drive to another city. And those are the opportunities we need to create. Not only is it good to build economic development, but it's also a great way to start alleviating the traffic that we have here in the city, is when people work in their city and play in their city and retire in their city, we're alleviating at a certain percentage how much is coming in and out when it comes to traffic.
Yeah, I would say having more jobs in the city county is good. But we also need to see more jobs in the private sector, because right now there's a lot of companies that want to pay hourly and not salary. Then when they want to pay salary, they don't want to provide benefits. How could any of our younger generation ever be able to afford a home, let alone for us to have forward economic development within our community that continues? Secondly, when it comes to people and not getting the salaries, that's also, we got to look at what types of industries we're letting come in. Right now, we had a lot of warehouses come in. We said that would create a lot of jobs. But my younger brothers, they went in and there was no forward movement. There was no career to be held. The hourly looked great to trap them. But in the end, they slowly quit and found something else. And now a lot of our folks are taking jobs in LA, Orange County, where they're willing to pay. We don't want to lose that in our community. So I think it's important to have a supporting student pipeline for our younger generation, whether they go to RCC, whether they go to CBU, and also helping our local small business owners to have access to resources like that as well. And that way, those small business owners can also provide forward-paying jobs that provide upward momentum and opportunity, and maybe even gets them ready for their next big job, right? So I know we have our innovation hub that just got created, or our district that got deemed without a lot of our resident consent. Usually it gets consented and discussed and then deemed and rezoned as an innovation district, but that did not happen for us.
Let me, excuse me, let me redirect a little bit
Yep.
in terms of look down the road. This next, I see what you're saying, but next 4, 5, 10 years out, what kind of jobs are you in specifically are you looking at? What is a
Well,
good job?
I would
that
say
you see in
clean
Riverside?
tech companies right now in general. Agriculture is a huge part of Riverside. I think we need to continue to have a focus on that as well. And innovation. We can't become stagnant and have companies coming in that aren't open to new ideas and sticking to the traditional. We don't want to happen what happened with Kodak and Fujifilm to happen to our entire city because we lack the openness to innovation.
One
Yeah,
of
if I
the
could-
things that we don't need to do is fly people to the Far East and become investment bankers. We go to find a company that's a startup that's never done anything, offer them, a couple $1 million to come to our city and open an office and develop their product. And maybe in 5 or 10 years, they'll have something that they may be able to sell. I don't think anybody on our mayor or our city council are tech entrepreneur, venture capital people. So they have the expertise to do that. They're just looking for a deal to bring back to say, hey, we brought back a job or a company, and then they're going to create all this stuff. Nobody knows that.
Mike,
I-
does that mean you're against entrepreneurship?
That's not what I said. I said
Okay.
I'm
I
against
just
going
wanted
over.
some
I'm against going over finding overseas companies and becoming a venture capital firm for them.
I agree with Mike. The city has prioritized big business at a loss for our small business community. And I'm out talking to a lot of our small business owners, and they feel squeezed on all sides. Post-COVID especially has been difficult, but the city charges really high utility rates. They charge them really high fees and permits. They make it difficult. Love the chamber, but I know a lot of small businesses have said that the focus of the chamber is on big business. And I get that. We need the development in the city too. But what kind of big businesses are we bringing into Riverside? Because right now the focus has been on logistics and warehousing. And those are not the type of jobs we need for the future. Are they bad jobs? No, I don't see anything as a bad job. I worked in a warehouse for 2 summers to pay my way through UCR. But are there better jobs that we're totally missing and not bringing in? Absolutely. My priority would be healthcare jobs. Those are, relatively future-proof jobs. My priority would be advanced manufacturing, trying to flip as many of our warehouses into advanced manufacturing as possible. And most importantly, support for our small business community. There's been so many incredible small businesses in Ward 2, but across the city that have felt neglect from the city, that have felt that their costs are too high, and have felt that Riverside is not a place for them. And that's unacceptable to me. Small businesses constitute the bulk of our job creators in this city, or at least a very solid bulk of the job creators.
Our small businesses are getting neglected. Like I said, with the planning, small business is the same way. One of the guys in Ward 2 told me he opened a deli, put in a permit a couple months later to get a grill. Took him a year. Then that started working out, so he asked for a pizza oven. That took 18 months. I mean, that's 2.5 years for something that should have taken a week. And it's ridiculous. We shouldn't do that to our small businesses.
No, I agree completely. But again, we can just make promises rather than present actual tangible plans. And I've done this. At Western, we created an incentive program for businesses that became water resilient. We helped them out with their turf. We gave them deals on their utilities, and the city can do the same thing. We not only need to incentivize businesses to join the city, we need to reward those that have stayed in the city. And by doing that, we create more jobs, and those who hire locally also should receive an incentive so that they can continue to do so.
All right, thank you very much. This is the last roundtable discussion. How do you like it so far? Is it pretty good, isn't it? Yeah. Not my idea. Justin and had a committee, and they thought of this new approach, and I think it's working out pretty well. Okay, so last one of these, leadership in the city manager. Riverside city manager will soon become the city manager of Pasadena. Riverside has had 5 permanent city managers since 2005, with an average tenure of 4 years, which is roughly half the national average and slightly less the state average. Does Riverside have trouble keeping city managers? If so, why? Or does Riverside provide so much great opportunities for the city managers to produce and excel and get things done that other cities just want to snap them up?
No,
What are you looking for in the next city manager, and how important is it that he or she sticks around for more than 4 years?
this is the city manager culture today. You look around, look in the different newspapers. Every city is hiring a guy that was 3 years ago was at this city, and now their guy has been there for 3 or 4 years, and he's at this city. And they just hop because they're going to get a 20% pay bump then every 3 years. And that's the culture of the city manager gig these days. Wish I'd have got into it about 20 years ago.
Right. Well, what I can say is that Western's general manager has been there for 9 years and not jumping to another place. And I'm not sure if necessarily that is the case, that we get rid of them too quickly, or, we scare them off too quickly. But what I do know is that they need to feel supported. Right. They need to look down the dais and see a city council that's working together rather than playing referee. Right. I think that will make sure it makes it easier to recruit a city council, plus them knowing that they have a sound budget. And so it will be incumbent upon the new city council or the new council members after June that when they're looking at recruiting and they're headhunting, I would be my desire that they do so locally first, so that we have a Riversider leading at the helm. But if that's not the case, that they're able to incentivize people to come because they've taken care of our budget. They've taken care of basic city services, so that they don't feel like they're coming here and having to fix everything for the city. And so again, we've been able to retain a general manager, and it's because we've been able to work together and work with staff that they work so hard that when they feel underappreciated, what is the saying? People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad managers, right? And so we will be their managers. So hopefully we have a council that works together, that they feel like, hey, they see the vision, they trust me, and I can do my job as a city manager.
You have to remember there's a lot more cities than there are water districts in Southern California. Not as many opportunities.
I would say, Gracie touched upon a good point, which is they don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad managers. Or bad managers. If we've had 5 city managers since 2005, I don't think it's the job. I think it's the leadership that we have on the city council. And in many cases, council is looking for a yes person. Council is looking for someone that will approve and not get in the way of their decision making. That's not what I would be looking for in our next city manager. I would be looking for someone who would be willing to tell me no if it didn't make sense for the city, who would be willing to call out and hold the line if we're spending money unaccountably, or if we're making decisions that hurt the future of the city, if we're prioritizing short-term profit over long-term sustainability for our community. That's what I would look for in the next city manager. And definitely, most importantly, someone that would be accountable to our budget, regardless if it pissed council members off or not. Because at the end of the day, the fiscal responsibility is one of the most important jobs for the city managers, because when we talk about cuts, we talk about services, if your budget's not there, those things have to happen, unfortunately. So that's what I would be looking for in the next city manager.
Yes, and I couldn't agree more, Aram. We need a city manager that's willing to say no, not someone who's afraid to lose their job because they won't say yes to all of city council. I think we also need to look at our charter, which gives the power to city council. That's also going to be going up in our ballots in 2028. And that charter committee is being formed this summer. Something to be mindful of is that infrastructure and that hierarchy just has to change. And with our city manager, they also need to be data driven. Looking at the impact, really holding accountable to the projects that we're putting our money to. That way they can say, hey, you know, we gave you this the last 5 years, but with the results not really impacting, we're no longer going to give it to you, versus continuing to fund and fund because people are used to being funded.
I would jump in too. I'm so glad Christen brought up the city charter. One of the things right now we have a very unique opportunity is that we're bringing on an inspector general for the city of Riverside. This is a position that currently is appointed. I would have preferred that it would have been elected, because the role of that job is specifically to look out for fraud, waste, abuse, corruption. And that's not to say that it's rampant in the city of Riverside. That's not what I'm insinuating. But every good government has checks and balances, and Riverside is no different and should be no different. So one of the things I would be advocating for very strongly is for a elected inspector general. If we can get on the 2028 ballot, fantastic. If not, that would be a major priority for me, because I think that humans are susceptible to making mistakes. Sometimes humans will take advantage of a system. That's not something I would want. And I would want them to work in tandem and in hand with the city manager, rather than be seen as an oppositional force in the city.
Right. The city manager's here to work for us, the residents, not city council. And city council serves us in many different ways, and also is there to listen to us at times, right? And I couldn't agree more. The inspector general, if this is someone who's to look at from a third party objective, if they're afraid of losing their job because they're not saying the right answer for the right project and approving certain things, how can we actually make sure that we're really looked after? If these two positions are reporting to others in a hierarchy that makes it highly influential and lack of third party observation. So
You're correct that if the city inspector works for the council, he's going to be pretty laid back on reporting if the council's doing anything, because then he will be fired. But and it's the same thing with the city manager. So you've got to get the independents in there so that they can call these guys out and call them out on the diocese. On the community involvement, this council is probably the worst I've ever seen. They've cut you down. They've put 25 or 30 things on the consent calendar. So if you want to speak on any of them, everybody speaks at the front on 20 different topics, and it's just a jumble of junk. They've cut out, they try to get you to speak as little as possible, because they want to just stay up there and say, we know what's best. We know what's best. And they need to put all that stuff out there, let people talk. And if it goes to 1 a.m. and the people want to stay and talk about an issue that they feel strongly about, they should let them. We had the community involvement engagement stuff a couple of years ago, and I haven't seen any of it being followed. It was great for a few months, but now it's like, no way.
Thank you. So this ends the free-for-all sort of roundtable. And I think you guys did I think you kind of give them a hand. That's pretty good. You guys want to stand up and take or can we keep going? What are you going to do? All right, we'll keep going. Okay, not only are we going to keep going, this is just going to be the most seamless transition ever, because we're going to the questions now. And this question thing is kind of the lightning round. So your responses will have to be kind of clipped, like 1 minute max. And but I'm sure you can do it. And if not, I'll butt in, but I don't want to butt in that much. But the first question happens to be about the Inspector General. So right off the bat, before I ask the question, you've raised another question in my mind. Can we go down the line? Aram, you think the Inspector General ought to be elected, right?
Yes.
Let's go down the line. Christine?
yes, I definitely think he needs to be elected, not appointed.
Or she.
Or she,
Okay.
yes.
They.
Or they,
Are they?
them.
How about you, Gracie?
I think they need to be qualified to do the job. Well, there's very, very rare elected positions where you need to be qualified. I think the DA is one of them, but we need an inspector general that is qualified for the job. And if that ends up being elected or appointed is different, and I don't know, to be honest, don't know the rules on
Which would you choose,
qualifications.
though, if you had a
I would
choice?
choose someone that's qualified.
Okay. And Mike?
It should be elected because you can't be under the thumb of the council and then have to report on the council.
Okay. All right. There you have it. Now to the question that is right here in front of me. The city is recruiting a first ever inspector general, which has taken a long time. It's probably measured in city manager years. It's probably taken about 2 city managers to get this inspector general. But assuming we get one, what should be the first thing the inspector general investigates and why? And then this is, again, jump right in. So whoever
Sorry,
gets
could
the
you
first
repeat the
minute.
question? I'm so sorry.
Pardon?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I sure will. Assuming we get an inspector general, what is the first thing that person should investigate and why?
I would say 2 things if I could. How we spend our homelessness dollars would be a big priority for me, and also how we award city contracts. The contract system, I think, has been flawed for a long time. The bid process and the rubrics that they use are totally up to the council throwing out a recommendation and going forward with whatever they want. A lot of these contractors contribute to council members during their election campaigns, and that's unacceptable.
Wait, is that true?
Yeah.
They contractors
Contribute?
give money to
Yeah.
city council? Oh my
The
God.
city of Riverside, I will say one last thing on this topic. The city of Riverside is one of the only major cities that has no campaign finance contribution limits, even though the state of California has set a limit of $5,900 per contribution. We need to get special interests and developers out of the contract process.
All right. Next up, and a little more than a minute. Keep it going. Keep it going.
Yeah, so I would definitely have the inspector general take a look at some of our projects that are receiving most of the funding, seeing if there's really impact, the data-driven results that they've been doing over the last however many years it's been funded, and really taking a look to see if it's truly serving the residents or if it's just serving another agenda.
Gracie or Mike?
I think the inspector general should begin with looking at how we're spending our bond money, our measure money that we keep asking for.
Okay. Mike?
I'm thinking that Aram is on the right track. Contracts and how we award them, and also the money that we're spending in the homelessness industrial complex.
Okay. All right. Question 2, constituent accessibility. Residents in every ward, according to the surveys and the registration, say the same thing. Once someone gets elected, they just disappear. What specific protocols and procedures will you institute to ensure that constituents who contact your office will receive a prompt response and attention?
Well, I think having coffee meetups on a regular basis outside of just campaigning needs to continue. Also, our city council meetings are typically at hours which most of us are at work. I think that also needs to change. In order to have informed citizens and citizens that are involved, how could they if all our meetings are during work hours and not even during the lunchtime? And if we only get an hour lunch, that's not really fair to expect us to spend our free time to then, if we want to become informed. So those are definitely 2 things that I would change immediately. And that's, again, looking back at our charter to make sure that there's some kind of protection that really holds city council accountable to having meetings that are available to everybody.
I think it's the most heartbreaking when we talk to residents and they say, I haven't heard from my council member. They won't answer my phone calls. It's the worst. And so that's why anybody that's picked up any of our literature, they'll find my personal cell phone number, a practice that I've had since day one in 2018. You have direct access to me. If anybody's tried to reach me through Western, you guys know there's a filter process. And so an email you send to me actually goes to staff, and staff decides, does Director Torres need to see this? And so I give out my personal email address so people don't get boggled down in those things. I'm a working mother, full-time mother, and I'm still able to pick up the phone and talk directly to constituents. And that's not going to change when I get on to City Council.
Okay. Mike?
For over 30 years, I've been a business consultant, and my clients call me. I used to have Canyon Lake call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I answer the phone. So my cell phone is on all of my material. My email address is on email address. It's got the campaign address. My cards have my personal email. If you reach out to me, I will reach out back and make sure that any questions that you have are answered.
Yeah, so two things. First of all, most residents' interactions, unfortunately, are with their council members at council meetings. In the last council that got elected, we've seen a move to limit public comment. We've seen a move to potentially get rid of virtual public comment, which is some of the only ways that people interact with their council. We've seen reductions in funding for Spanish language translation for meetings and ASL translation for meetings, even though we have one of the largest deaf populations in California. This is a real problem. So for me, it would be pushing back on all of that as soon as I get into office. You get elected to listen to residents. You meet once a week. If it's midnight, if it's 2 a.m., that's literally your job. So I would be 100% behind that. Additionally, I would look for creative ways, not at the taxpayer's expense, to bring on College Corps interns or others so we can have more staff working for the office. You have one council member and usually 2 representatives, if I'm not mistaken, serving a district of 45,000 people. Some of the council members are not good at responses. Some just don't have, they're flooded with issues, which is a real problem. So I would want to have the staff necessary to do that as well.
Right. Technically, we only get about 1.5 or 2.5.
Yeah.
I don't know how you have half of a person on a staff. But I think that definitely needs to change. And especially with, like you're saying, the meetings and how we're having discussions and workshops need to be more accessible and available as well.
All right. Another question, question 4. Measure Z, which the City Council originally titled City of Riverside Services Renewal Measure, and was later renamed by a judge to read City of Riverside Voter Approved Transaction and Use Tax Renewal Measure, is actually a sales tax. It's so hard to say, sales tax. It raises the Measure Z sales tax from 1% to 1.25% indefinitely, which supersedes Measure Z, which is scheduled to expire in 2036. The city says most of the new revenue will go to fill in understaffed fire department that needs 84 more firefighters and hasn't added a new fire station for almost 20 years. Do you support this measure? Yes or no? And why?
No, because they'll do the same thing they did 10 years ago. They shovel almost all the money goes in the general fund, and yeah, we'll give some of it to the police and some of it to the fire, and we'll give some of it to the Cheech, and we'll build a new library, and we'll do a bunch of other things, but they give you part of it, but they don't give it all. And the make it go forever is ridiculous. What they don't need to put in perpetuity clause in this 10 years out. 2 years out, if there's a need and you have done a bunch of budget cutting and making it work, then maybe it can go another extension of 10 years. But to have it go forever and they go, oh, well, they can get rid of it anytime they want. Because the first thing they're going to do is, we're going to cut police and fire.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, for this Measure Z, I definitely do support it, but not indefinitely, mainly because our lack of infrastructure will impact all of us and our safety. Right now, a lot of that money will go to the firefighters, but how do we know if it truly will? And that's where it comes back to accountability, right? A lot of people say, okay, it's going to go into the general fund and then it's going to get sifted out. And that's where all the money gets lost. So if we do have this Measure Z, making sure that there's accountability to it. And also making sure that we're not doing it indefinitely as well, because the city does need some money. But like I said, looking at additional revenue streams is very crucial to our long-term living and for everybody to be able to thrive together.
Anybody else? Gracie?
I do support it. Ward 2 is in a high fire zone. We ended up in one of the heaviest risks on the new fire maps that have come out. I'm knocking on doors as people tell me they're afraid of losing everything. And that's a real concern. That is a real concern. So not only do I support it for that reason, but I also support it because, you know, our firefighters have the same concern. They say, hey, we need this money. We're going to work to get this passed. We want to make sure that that money is held accountable. The reality is Measure Z, and one of us is going to be elected on June 2nd. So it is going to be incumbent upon that city council, whether it passes, to make sure that money goes where it belongs and it takes care of residents in Ward 2 that are afraid to lose everything. Get us off those fire maps. If it doesn't pass, it is incumbent upon us to look at that budget and get the firefighters the money they need so that they take care of the residents in Ward 2 who are afraid to lose everything.
Aram.
Yeah, I do support Measure Z as a special tax. I do believe the Measure Z will fail on this budget cycle. We have knocked hundreds of doors, thousands of doors in Ward 2. People don't want a new tax. We're in an they're overtaxed, but more importantly, we chose the worst possible time to launch this when this thing expires in 2036. And I'm aware of the deficits in our budget. I reviewed that on the Budget Engagement Commission. We read the fire plan that the firefighters brought forward. We need accountability for how this money is spent. It was brought to us in 2016 when they first passed this. We said it was going to go to police, fire, homelessness, youth services, senior services. Only 1% of Measure Z has gone to homelessness spending. Where's the accountability? Now we're bringing a new tax forward. I would support it as a special tax. The day they announced that, I would support that. It would require 2/3 of a vote to pass. We would do a lot of campaigning. I would certainly sign up to campaign for that. And the residents would have the comfort knowing that their money is going to be spent specifically on hiring firefighters and building fire stations, which our ward does need.
10 years ago, they passed this tax and projected it would make 42 million a year. It's now making 86 million a year. So it's created roughly $650 million. Now, we've known that we've need fire stations for quite a while. They've just got the official study, but we've known that they haven't built a fire station here in 20 years. And the population's grown. But there was never any interest in putting money to that. Now, right now, we're doing 84 million a year. It's $84 million for 2 fire stations for the next, and we could take 8 million a year, 8.4 million for 10 years, build our 2 new fire stations. And I'm sure that every ward could probably find $1 million in projects they could cut, which would give us $8 million.
We're going to move on. Question 5. It's headed one honest answer. All right. Name one thing that the city council has gotten right and one thing it has gotten wrong.
I'll go first. I think the fact that we banned kratom products and things like that, that was good. I don't think we need nitrous oxide and kratom in our community, so I applaud the council for moving forward with that. One thing we've gotten terribly wrong is how we treat our residents. Residents feel hostile from our current council members. They feel left out of the process. They feel ignored. They have been ignored when they shorten the public comment to 45 minutes, when they try to get rid of virtual public comment. I think the city council has been totally wrong on that. Calling city council meetings, business meetings in public is a farce. That is your people's city council. That you paid for that city council and those council chambers. So I'm completely opposed to the anti-resident push that I've seen and the focus on, more focus on donors rather than residents.
Yeah, I would say one thing that was good was that there's been an attempt to streamline a little bit more of the permitting. Now everything's centralized. If you want to get a business permit, you can find that all in a portal, but that doesn't mean it's truly streamlined. Centralizing something doesn't mean the process itself has changed. There's still a lot of red tape that we deal with. So I think really taking a look at how our departments are working together, because that's how the deadlines and how things get elongated out to actually get done. At the same time, I couldn't agree more with Aram. This has to be a city council that serves our residents. Getting rid of public comments, having items going straight to consent when it should be a discussion or a workshop is definitely something that needs to change.
Okay. One of the things that I think the city council has done right is the trash situation. Our trash is getting picked up on time. I know, right? You know, my boy, that's his one job, his one chore. And when the trash wasn't being picked up on time, you're like, Mom, they haven't picked it up yet. And how am I going to discipline this kid when it's not his fault, right? One thing that I think the city council has done wrong is refuse to work with each other, refuse to reach across the aisle, refuse to shake hands and say, hey, where can we make compromises? Can we collaborate rather than have drama on the dais?
I think one of their big mistakes was in the transmission line process of putting it above ground instead of underground. And the risk that puts Riverside, as far as risk management goes, which I did in my prior life at Canyon Lake. But now if a fire happens and we have a Altadena, God forbid, and part of La Sierra burns down because that's where those lines are going to go, and there's a $400 million claim, the city's on the hook for 50% because they actively voted to put it above ground instead of below ground. You've now accepted 50% of the responsibility. So you'll be on the hook with Edison for 50% of that, whatever the damage is. If it's $500 million, the city will be writing a check.
Okay.
Just
We're gonna-
curious,
We're
real
going to
quick.
move on because we got lightning round. We
Dan,
got some more to go.
can we just poll real quick the room? How many of you know what the RTRP project is? Okay. Yes, the transmission lines. Okay, good. Because that's something that wasn't shared with all residents and all wards. So I like to see that many of you know. Thank
That's
you.
Interesting. In January, the city council narrowly turned down a $20 million grant that would have converted the Quality Inn on University Avenue to permanent supportive housing. The decision is now being contested in court. But would you have voted to accept or reject this grant? Yes or no, and why?
I'll give the same answer I've given in every public forum that I've been on. I would have resoundingly supported that project. No questions asked. I think it was a major misstep by the council to turn down that kind of money. It was a once in a generation investment in homelessness. It sent the wrong signal to our Riverside community. It sent the wrong signal to the state of California. It put our pro-housing designation at risk. And it told people that Riverside's not interested in solutions. It's interested in partisanship and just political showmanship. It was wrong. And, I would really hope all the answers here are that they would have supported this as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That Quality Inn project was huge for us. And given the fact that that is something that we applied for and then in the end turned down when we were given the funds, what does that tell the state when we want to come back and ask for more funding to improve our housing? Especially if right now we're not meeting our housing goals. Where are we going to get the money from? Increase Measure Z more? I don't think so.
Okay. Gracie? Or Mike, we go ahead.
So he always looks so ready to go. I'm going to answer the same way I answered before, but since it looks like we're a little more lenient on time, I'm going to be very, very clear about my answer. I wasn't on the city council when it happened. What I wanted to know is how many residents, and I know people want to turn that into businesses, how many residents were actually engaged with about this project? I couldn't get an answer for that. Right? What I know is that we need projects like these. We need housing. I am supportive of those things. But the reality is this didn't happen not because of yes, no's. It was because the council was unwilling to work together. They were unwilling to pick up the cell phone and say, hey, I need you to support me. What do we need to do? What concessions do we need to make that happen?
But if you, let
That's-
me interrupt it, but if you had been on the council,
If I
that's the
had been on
question.
the council and
Yes.
known that no resident was talked to, then I would have voted against it, which is what I said before. I believe that this community where this project was going deserves the right to be informed about this project.
I'd have to say there was a lot of lobbying happening though, and a lot of residents did get talked to over 3 years of this project going in. It's one of the reasons why it was voted and
Well,
supported.
I asked those questions because again, wasn't sitting on the dais. I asked these questions. I couldn't get an answer
Okay.
from folks.
Well,
I wasn't on the dais.
Respectfully, the council meetings are public. The discussion was public. This has been
And
a year-long
I didn't
plus
see
process.
residents speak out there.
Well-
We didn't see, there was, I think I think we're losing. Right.
They're
So,
talking-
but I asked how many residents were engaged?
I would say hundreds, if not probably over 1,000 residents were engaged.
They were?
Now let me say something. You know, if Gracie didn't have a chance to watch the meetings or whatever, that's fine. Maybe let's reframe the question. Would you have turned down $20 million to invest in homelessness with that quality end project? If at that
I actually wouldn't have, but as a council member, I would have done my due diligence to make sure it passed. That's what I would have.
Every single council member, if I can just respond, every single council member was contacted multiple times. The businesses were engaged, the
their
residents were engaged.
colleagues?
Yes, by their colleagues.
Oh.
One of them is sitting in the hall. I'm sure they could say many calls. Additionally, folks, what we're seeing here is, again, business interests winning out over resident interests.
Okay,
There was a-
Wait a
No,
minute.
no.
Because
Can
that's
I ever,
not
can
with
I
regards-
ever get in here to
One-
answer?
One
Not
at a
with
time.
That is not true. I was very genuine in my answer. When
I'm not
I
referring to
said-
you. I'm talking about the
I-
way our council votes.
No,
Dan?
okay, but I'm being very genuine in my answer. I always vote based on what residents tell me.
Well, residents said they wanted the project.
And
Okay, I'm going to interrupt now.
but exactly.
This is, I think your views are well
When I asked
known.
the question, no one could answer
I
me
think
that question.
we've got interest of time here. So Mike, you've got a minute.
Okay, I would have voted against it. One of the things that I found out was that this is a 50-year project, which you're getting a $20 million grant for. The tab for over 100 or the over 50 years was over $100 million the city would have been responsible for. And so you're getting 20 million to spend 100. Is that a good deal?
All right, let's move on. There's a lot of vacant city-owned property along University Avenue that has been up for sale and off the tax rolls for years. What kind of development do you want to see, and what will you do to get things moving?
I can answer this one. I've talked about this a lot. The University Avenue specific plan has not been updated in over 20 years. There's components in there that were maybe made sense at the time that no longer make sense today for the development. We need to prioritize, I think, housing development first and foremost, especially along University Avenue. If there's ways to put in retail spaces, if there's ways to put in small businesses, I fully support that. But the priority needs to be housing. It's already zoned R4. We have an opportunity to really build along a very nice transit corridor. That would be my priority. And to get things moving on day one, I would convene the University Avenue specific plan to get a group going and make sure residents had input on how it was developed as well.
Yes, and a lot of these lands are vacant because of the changes recently in different policies when it comes to housing. I think definitely because it's already zoned R4 and sitting on your planning commission forward too, I think it's really important to continue to provide housing for our residents, whether it's middle-class housing, multi-unit housing, and at the same time, that doesn't mean we overlook why some commercial entities refuse to purchase those properties. Some of those properties are actually poisoned with things that are leaking out of the ground from generations of businesses having been on there in the past and just covering it up in staff reports to turn it into residential housing. I think we also need to look into the detail of how those pieces of land have been taken care of before we just build on it as well.
Okay. Okay, we're on the clock, so make your answers short. If you want to weigh in, you don't have to weigh in. Go ahead.
No, I would like to see more third spaces. We need places for our students to hang out so they're not partying in our neighborhoods. We need a lot more of those types of spaces on this corridor.
I would go for some parks and house. If we're gonna do housing, the less apartments, the better. Everybody does, we don't need, buildings with 300 apartments at $2,500 a month.
Mhm. We got not that much time left, but we'll keep going. Residents near UCR say corporations and investors are buying up single-family homes, adding bedrooms, packing them with students. Parking disappears, neighborhoods change drastically. Ordinary families feel under siege. Should the city limit how many unrelated people can live in a single-family home, and which rules currently on the books need stricter enforcement?
Yeah, so I don't know, I can jump in, Mike. I don't know if you wanted to go. Okay. I can talk about this. So being, obviously a resident that lived in those, sometime in those homes during my time in college, this is something that was poorly managed, I think, by the city. They allowed cut-ups. You have landlords, again, from out of state, from out of country sometime, buying up a single family home and cutting it up into 7, 8 rooms. That brings the parking, that brings the trash, the noise disturbances. At the same time, we've pulled back funding for things like UNET, which managed some of those and mitigated some of those impacts on the community. I think the city should limit, but at the same time, we need to go after the source of the problem, which is treating housing as an investment. That is what has propagated this, most importantly in these neighborhoods, because it's been allowed to happen. Secondly, like I said before, I would really push the university to build more housing on campus and help them, get them state grants, work with them to lobby up at the UC Regents to make sure that we're housing more students off campus or on campus and less off campus.
I would say, yeah, if we limit the unrelated amount of people in a household, that's covering the symptom, not the problem. The problem's truly, we need to limit the amount of corporations that are owning our homes and what they're doing with it. And we need to give that back to the people, back to the residents, so we can own our homes, so our kids can own homes, so our grandchildren can own homes, and really take a look at, okay, maybe we should take a look at putting a percentage on how much corporations can own in our own housing, and looking at, how many of our housing today is actually owned by residents and going through data-driven results.
Okay, I'm going to cut this off and finish up with crime. We have to talk a little about crime and get to Gracie and Mike to be the first responders here. Multiple residents who registered for this forum wrote about the same thing, crime. They want and need help. Riverside's crime rate is up 27% above the national average, and the UCR neighborhood rates among the city's highest crime areas. What is one specific thing you as a council member will push for to make Ward 2 safer?
I would get with Chief Gonzalez and is that working? I thought you said you couldn't hear me. Sorry. I would get with Chief Gonzalez and try and work out some type of a coverage plan with the officers and the local lieutenant to make sure that we had more, at least 20 to 40% more patrols. And so the more visible police are, the less crime you're going to get.
Gracie?
I'm actually proud to be supported by our police officers association for this reason. We need to lower the response times. We need to make sure that our dispatchers are taken care of and paid well. One thing that's different between us public employees and the police is that they don't have the luxury to call an emergency and stay home. They have to go to work. And so we need to be able to take care of them so they can take care of us.
Well, I think that wraps it up. We have more questions, but we have no more time. So thank you very much to the candidates. I think you put on a great forum. Thank you. Thank you. Very informative and yes. I just read above you. And now for your closing statements. So particular order, we can go in reverse alphabetical order if you like, since I called you up in alphabetical order. Mike, why don't you go first?
For over 30 years, I've been a business consultant solving problems for businesses. The city is a business. It has problems. And that's why I get called, because People have problems. They've talked to some friends. I've helped them or they've heard about me and I come in and fix their problems. I want to come in and help the city solve some of its problems. I can't solve them all probably, although I'll try. But I will work with the other members of the council and I work with everybody. So I'm not one of those partisan guys that only works with my team. Work with the city manager, work with the department heads and figure out what we need. Listen to my constituents. That's what it's all about, is serving the people in Ward 2. And if you guys have issues and you get them to me, I will do my best to get them solved.
There's a lot of work to get done in the city of Riverside. This city can't afford a council member that needs on-the-job training. We need a tested and tried leader that can get to work on day one and deliver results. I'm the only council member with actual governing experience that has balanced budgets, that has worked with city staff to take care of our residents. When the pandemic hit, I made sure the water kept running. When we were in an economic crisis, I voted against rate increases and protected and put residents first. I also made sure to bring millions, and I mentioned this, to bring jobs and to protect our ratepayers in funding. I've done this job. I'm a mother, I'm a Riversider, and I know what Riverside needs. And the reality is that on day one, I'll be able to get to work on the things that matter to you most, bring back the things that you're disappointed didn't happen, and actually make it happen. I think we're here today in order to make a decision about how we move forward, but the reality is this city needs a proven leader to get things done on day one.
Okay.
My name is Christen Montero, not Christina, and I've been a resident of Ward 2 for over 29 years. I'm a product of our local schools. I attended University of Redlands, where I also received my MBA, and my undergraduate is in physics and psychology. And I've also been a startup business owner right here in Riverside, representing innovation back in 2016 and until now. I come from the tech sector, so I have a lot of experience when it comes to scaling, growing companies, working with minimal resources, and getting creative and how to source the resources we need to really get things done. I'm also your planning commissioner for Ward 2. I'm recently appointed in March. I think that says a lot to people who may question my first-time candidacy. I may be new as a politician candidate, but I'm no politician. I'm a resident just like you, tired of the BS and looking for things to change. So I think it's time for a new direction, a new voice. I'm endorsed by Senator Sabrina Cervantes. I'm also endorsed by California State Treasurer Fiona Ma and Supervisor Jose Medina. You can reach me at 951-406-0664. I think this is recorded, so if you didn't get that, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I really believe in open door policy, creating access for all our community. Thank you for coming tonight.
My name is Aram Ayra. I'm an educator. I'm a city commissioner. I've served you as your city commissioner now for 6 years across 2 commissions, the Human Relations Commission and the Budget Engagement Commission. I was also a former nonprofit director working at Big Brothers Big Sisters, specifically on workforce development and investing in our next generation of youth. I'm a UCR graduate. I got my bachelor's and my master's here, and I've advocated for this ward at every level, local, state, and federal, during my time here. I've been president of the Riverside Neighborhood Partnership. I know what it means to be a neighborhood advocate. I'm running to lower costs and to restore trust and accountability into City Hall, 2 areas where City Hall has been failing in the last couple of years and somewhere that Riverside needs to make a priority. I'm going to fight for affordable housing and rent relief. I'm going to fight for more accessible childcare for our working families. I'm going to fight any future utility rate hikes. And I'm going to fight really hard to make sure that your city council is your city council, not the donor city council, not the special interest city council, but that we put residents first day one that I'm in office. I will stand up and work with the council when there's an opportunity to do so, but I will also stand on my principles and stand up for residents when it's time to do so as well. Because what we've seen from our council in the last couple of years has not been pro-resident. I don't know what it's been, but it hasn't been pro-resident. So if you want someone with the experience, with the passion, and with the willingness, I'm the only candidate in this race that has publicly rejected any money from corporate PACs and warehouse developers, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much again, Kristen. I want to apologize for calling you not Kristen. And thank all of you for being so involved and engaged and answering these questions. And thank you all for coming. And thank Justin Pardee here for setting this whole thing up.